Hey everybody, this is Rodney Watson, running against Jimmy Stevens in the District 3 commission race. I got a call back from Concord School today, the principal, Miss Vines, and she gave me permission to tell what she told me about the storm shelter. And everybody's been fussing at me about sort of giving Jimmy Stevens the business for the way he handles business, in the county. And but he mishandled this storm shelter down here from the start when it was built, this down here at the school. Now, me and Miss Vines spoke, and we had a good conversation. She's a very intelligent person, and what it comes down to down there is that the citizens were promised that storm shelter would be open to them when it was needed for a tornado, and they was promised that when it was being under construction and right-of-way was being acquired to put the turning lanes and all in and widen that road. And Miss Vines come in after the fact, and she was not aware of these promises that was made to the community. And there was a tornado warning put out, and people was calling wanting to know if the school was open. And she, if I remember the conversation correctly, she didn't open it at that time. Well, she got a lot of kickback about it, and then there was another tornado warning, and she left her home from where she's at, which is about 20 minutes away, rode out there during a tornado warning, opened that school up, and I believe she said she had 100 and something people show up. They brought dogs, pillows, blankets, and somebody brought a bird down there for that tornado shelter. Somebody had a Doberman Pinscher, and it got in a fight with somebody else that had a beagle. She couldn't keep people in their area. They kept trying to roam out through the building. She's a lady. She's a principal, and she's down there having to sort of try to keep order with all this going on. People would not stay in the shelter area. Some of them kept trying to look out the door and watch the storm. And she called the sheriff's department and tried to get some help down there, and they said they couldn't send anybody unless she had a fight going on down there. And it was just a chaos, and she told me it was the most horrible night of her life. All right? Now, that principal got up, left her house, and went and opened that up, and that's the experience that she had. Well, she tried to call the county commission and come up with a procedure and get some help with this, and they had a meeting, and Jimmy Stevens didn't even show up. He sent his assistant. I think she said his name's Chris. I can't think of his last name. And Chris come to the meeting, and they was trying to get a protocol put together about handling this storm shelter down here. Well, it come down to her and the fire chief has come up with this protocol. Fire department opens it, and a school official has to stay with it. But it ain't right for her to have to stay down there by herself. She says she's tried to get citizens to sign a volunteer sheet that they'll help man it, and try to come up with a system. And all this is because Jimmy Stevens promised the community something he didn't have any business promising them. She said, I think it's the EMA told her that school down there is not really a shelter. It's a safe room, and that it's not set up to shelter people for several days. If a tornado hits that school, you'll be all right inside it, but the building's going to come down around you, and you're going to have to be there for several days until they dig you out. That's what she told me. The EMA told her. Now, I told her this. I said, if I become commissioner, I said, and I'm able to do this, and I snap my fingers and make it happen. I said, I know this procedure we have to go through. But I said, I would ask if the sheriff's department would man these tornado shelters. I would ask that they open them up when there's a warning, and they would man them all day. I said, now going along with that, we're going to have to fund the sheriff's department to do that, if the sheriff's department agrees to do it. But there's going to be some funding to have to pay those extra policemen for that day, or keep the car out there. There's cost to keeping the car out there. There's cost when your policeman comes out. They can't come out for free. I told her that I'd have to look into that, and that's what I'd like to see done. The because she had so much chaos down there trying to keep people from fighting, and dogs from fighting, telling people what to do. Well, the only people that can do that is your sheriff's department or your local police. To make this functional, the storm shelter's got to be opened when there's a watch. That gives the citizens an assurance that they can plan on getting in there, and it has to have somebody with some authority there backing it up with putting you in jail if you don't behave correctly. And that's what has to be there. Simply a man there with a gun and a badge, you'd be surprised what kind of problem that solves, just him being there. Okay? The principal can't man that down there and control all the chaos with just humans in general. The fire chief doesn't need to be out trying to open them up during a tornado warning. But Jimmy and some other people involved, as the Board of Education at the time they were built, made these promises to the community. This principal and fire chief is doing all they can to fulfill that responsibility. And I'm just going to tell you, Jimmy Stevens should have been at that meeting. Jimmy Stevens should be proactive about getting this problem solved. Somebody asked me, well, what will I do? I'll get that solved as your commissioner. To the process I just asked you, or told you about, I'd have to ask the sheriff's department to do this. They've got to agree. They're going to have funding. What would Rodney Watson do instead of the stadium? I would like to think I could take part of that $1 million instead of giving it to the stadium, give it to the sheriff's department to get this done. The other storm shelter is going to be finished one of these days, and maybe this will be a moot point about the school. But Jimmy dropped the ball on this. I would not have done this if I had told the community that they could use it as your commissioner, and a problem arrives later. It wasn't going to be able to. I'd just tell you. I'd say, look, we told you something that we can't follow through with. Or I'd have to follow through with it and ask the sheriff's department to open it up during a watch. And I'd be man enough to tell you. That's the kind of commissioner you're going to get out of me. Once we get everything took care of in District 3, the basics, they want to build something in Birmingham. Well, the stadium's a done deal, y'all. I mean, I'm just using that as an example. But Jimmy all signed on with all this, and he can't even straighten out a storm shelter issue. And he was asked to come to the meeting. He didn't even show up. I'm not being hard on Jimmy. Jimmy's hard on himself. No man does business this way. I'll do business different. If I tell you something, it's not going to be a lie. I may be wrong, and I may have to tell you I was wrong, and we got to do this to correct it, or we're going to have to be flexible and come up with a better solution. I'm not just going to stay out of the meeting and run from you. Just not going to do it. The storm shelter down there, the fire chief and the principal is doing the best they can with what they have. They're getting no help out of the county commission. Miss Vines, she told me this. Now, she can't, she told me the whole deal. I'm sure she won't tell anybody else the whole deal like she did me, because I'm running. Why? It's not because I'm important, but I'm running. And she was good enough to tell me the situation. You got a great school principal down there. I know your fire chief. I hadn't mentioned his name because he hadn't given me permission. I haven't talked to him. I went to school with your fire chief down there. I know him pretty well. I know he's a good man. They need some help out of the county commissioner down there, and they can get this straightened out, make it more functional. But Jimmy's got to step up. Or, if I become your county commissioner, I got to step up. Rodney Watson, June 5th, I will get this storm shelter situation straightened out through the process I just told you about. And if we can't do that, we'll have to find another answer to it. But the principal opening this thing up in the middle of the night, not having any kind of authority to tell people quit fighting, get away from the door, quit going up through the school, sit down over there, get them dogs apart, get that bird out of here. She can't do that, y'all. That's a shame. Jimmy's leaving. Leaving that up to that woman down there. That's a good woman. I wouldn't leave that up to her. Rodney Watson, June 5th. Thank you.